I'm actually starting to put not only recognise faces, but I can actually start remembering the correct names for things. Things, yeah. We're going to have 1 hour. And I want you to reflect, because I'm going to ask some volunteers towards the end of this session. This has never been done before. You've heard me say that, and I want to repeat it. When you do things that have never been done before, when you're working with a group of people, you have to allow for the fact that things change. Because I'm using a lot of reliable methodology, but from engaging people like yourselves to actually produce things that will help you, help students, it's a very collaborative effort. So when you're thinking through what I'm covering, think about if you would like to volunteer. Because if you do, you're in for an exciting ride. You're in for more work. I can't, it's not going to be all sweetness and light, but have to think about that. We now have interest of this project from somebody who is a chief academic officer of 100,000 students. And I talked to him 4 years ago about this, and Ken and I talked to him this week, and he's very interested. So we're starting to get some real interest, and some of you will be excited about that, others will be saying, I've got enough on my plate, and that's fair enough. I'm genuinely asking for volunteers. The agenda. I asked questions of the same questions of the different groups, and people generally said, can you go over Sparta and can you go over alignment again? And I'm going to do that. Instructional tactics, who's on first, will be an exercise that you'll do in your divisional groups, and I'll pose you 3 questions about getting deeper alignment with people. This will be more and better expectations as a paired practice exercise to start getting a flavour of some of the skills that I think you may find useful. I say may because nobody else ever put this document didn't exist till last night, and I did pull it from different places, yes, but there's a lot of stuff in here that's new. Okay. We're going to look at phase 2 project plan. As I've said to the divisional meetings, it's the next 8 weeks. And whether we get time for Q&A, I don't know. I'm here afterwards, and I'm quite happy to engage in conversation, but I do appreciate that many people have to be out of here at 4:30 for all sorts of reasons. Okay? But let's get started. The overall assessment of 27 of you out of the 34 is this has got some potential. The interesting thing that I showed you, and I'm just sort of recalibrating this, that the people that did something different, 16 of you were asking students about their expectations. As many of you will have heard, this is of particular interest to me that it is low. And the reason, the connection is, people are starting to say, when I do things with the expectations approach, students are policing themselves, right? That is a good thing because it makes your life a lot easier. And it starts getting them to take accountability for their own learning. It's got a lot of, it's a bit like that piece of candy that's underneath the sofa for too long. It comes out, it's got a lot of hairs on it. So there's a lot of potential there. And I want to explore that as we go through. The other thing, just to remind you, is where we are looking for expectations come in shapes and sizes. One of the most important things is when we get a student from a different environment, and they could be an Afghan vet all the way through to 18, 19-year-old wet behind the ears fresh out of high school. But they all come with their own toxicity. they all have bad experiences of education and learning, and we don't want to step on any landmines, so trying to find out what those are early, find out where the unrealistic expectations are. Like, as Alex said, somebody produced a paper for him to mark at 9:30 in the morning and expected the result at 10:30 in the midst of a class he was running. We need to find that stuff out right early. So what is, and it's a very strange thing, but you suddenly meet somebody and you say, what would you like me to stop doing? And they look at you and go, what? So no, from all your experience, John, of education, what is the things that, please don't do this to me? It really upsets me. So we need to find that out. And then, when we're saying you don't need to do this, what do we want you to start doing? Because change is about starting to do different things, not just do things differently. Banging your head against a brick wall repeatedly will not bring the wall down. It has some other medical consequences, which Dawn can probably enlighten us on, and several of her colleagues here. It's not a good thing. And there's certain things we want people to keep doing. So that's the setup for the session. Smarter was, and the reason I asked questions about it was some people, a few, said, I'm using the Smarter acronym and it's helping me, and I didn't know whether other people would find it useful. And some people, refreshingly honest, some people said, well, I sort of remember it. I can't remember. One person actually had all the notes down, which was very impressive, but hadn't used it. And so, you know, it's like all these things, a refresher about why we use Smarter. We use Smarter because when I say to somebody here, I expect you to turn up on time, and they turn up when the lecture actually starts, the instructional piece, at exactly that time when they put their bag down, I'm probably feeling a little frustrated. For example, safety equipment has to be there, tools have to be out, for example, or this workstation's got to be whatever it is. So there's certain things about that where specificity really does help us. And so it's specificity to focus things. We want to be able to measure it. Some of the things that we're asking for are not as simple as turning up on time. For example, in maths and science we had quite a bit of a discussion about how you set expectations that at this point in the program you'd better be here every week, otherwise you're in deep doo-doo. And somebody said, yeah, when I tell them that, then they don't turn up because they think they can do the front and the back and get a grade that way. And we had all sorts of conversations, but certainly measurability is important. The other thing about it is agreement. I have an expectation of you and you agree with it. Simple, isn't it? No, it isn't. Because let your yes be yes and let your no be no. But whatever you do, don't give me a definite maybe. And that's where the frustration comes with a lot of student relationships. That they need to understand, when you agree, you have permission to disagree, but when you agree, I'm going to hold you accountable. And I'm not mucking about, because I've got 15 weeks in which I'm going to produce somebody who understands how to take an engine out and put it back in, or whatever it is. We need to be driving for that expectation, and that people need to understand, let your yes be yes, let your no be no. That's what that agreement means for Smarter. That's why it's so important. Then, what happens, and this is reported by you, is their fellow students start holding them accountable. Did you know there's one group this week that's firing one of their members? They're not turning up, they're not collaborating, they're out of here. This is a good thing, right? Because we want to get on and do what we need to do, which is teach and train and all those things that we have to do, rather than play some sort of gruesome parent trying to police these people. And I put it in graphic terms because it's the end of a long day, and I really want to get over why Smarter is so important. we have to look at realism. Realistic is a very slippery term because we have such a wide range of students. And we had a lot of conversation this week about, yeah, they're trying really hard, but they're not getting it. and you know, somebody who's trying really hard, you tend to treat them in a different way than somebody who's just swinging a lead and just trying to get past, right? So realism is a funny term, but it's important, and things have to be timed. Now I talk to teachers of middle school and kindergarten. They're friends of mine in my community. And I said, well, do you think this will help, this alignment of expectations? I said, yeah, down to kindergarten level. What? Kindergarten level? Yeah, kindergarten level. The only thing that changes with young children is that you only talk about the day, and then when they get a bit older, you can talk about the week. And then when they get a bit older, you can talk about a month and the semester and so on, right? But bringing kids up about expectations and agreements seems to be a good idea. The other thing is, what are the ethics involved? And this relates to values and beliefs. It's things like, this is something that came up quite often, is you get an immature clique in a class, right? And they are doing things that are inappropriate, right? I'm looking at Nicole, you know, because we had a conversation about this, and there's certain things about the way you conduct yourself, and that's what that E is there for. The other thing is, some people are recording it, and they're referencing it on a board or somewhere like this. This is what you agreed to, Ryan, and that's useful. So Smarter has some dynamics to it that really help cement what you're actually negotiating with your learners. So hopefully that's a review that sort of, you're looking puzzled.
No, I'm just squinting.
Oh, did you like these?
That's right.
Oh, okay. The other thing that we talked about was getting out expectations is not alignment. The reason we started there is 70% of the time people have expectations of other people they don't tell them about. And then people are walking around this, oh, you have to be a bloody mind reader around here. Right? It's that feeling that you can't please people because they're not telling you what they want, right? So, that is step one. You, as the holder of expectation, or your student, and this equally applies, when you talk to them, say, don't tell me that you're dissatisfied 6 weeks into the semester because I didn't understand or know about your expectation. The other thing is, they then have the permission to agree, disagree, or it doesn't need to be done. And when you're getting used to new students, they come in with all sorts of funny ideas about what you want. No, you don't need, you're not in high school now, this is what, you know, that's important calibration. Now, having got an agreement, this is the slippery bit. If I say to Nicole, I expect you to turn up on time, and Nicole looks at me and goes, yes, sir. I like to be called sir, by the way. And you have a sense that you've just engaged the term is bobblehead, I think. You know, the lights are on, but nobody's in. So at that point, we say, okay, when I ask, when you're agreeing to me, can you tell me, please, how you're going to demonstrate being on time? Well, people will give you a very strange look at this point, because everyone assumes being on time is being on time, isn't it? And if you work in cosmetology or auto or in a lab, there are things that have to be done for you to start on time. So it's not as obvious, right? And by asking them to supply you with evidence, guess what happens? It's probably the most effective piece of testing understanding you can do, as you hear some amazing detail about what they think it means to agree with you. when that conversation is engaged, how are they feeling about you as their instructor? You stand a chance of actually getting through the first barrier that, oh my God, they're listening to me. A teacher is actually listening to me and is interested. And that has a lot of benefits all the way down the line, as many of you have evidenced by using the expectation approach. When you hear a student give you the evidence that they're going to give you to meet your agreement, you can then make a judgment where they're going to need help. I'm not talking about a straight A student that's got a structure and they're off and running. They're off to the races before you even turned up, right? I'm talking about the people who, by their description, are giving you a sense of, okay, when we get to that point in the program, I want you to come to me, and I don't want you to struggle. Quite a few facilitators this week, instructors this week, were saying, I just want them to come to me so I can help them. And what's stopping them coming to me, you know? And obviously they're not talking about the brightest students who always ask questions and you know, it's the other students that we deal with. And that enables us to then, you'll see why those comments came out, which was, after doing the expectations approach, 2 people came to me after the session that I don't think would have talked to me unless I'd done it. Now, you know and I know that somebody coming right at the front end of the semester with a concern, we stand a chance of being able to help them, rather than December the 13th, they go, I'm worried. What are you worried about? The exam. Have you done any preparation? No. You should be worried. You should be worried. So this alignment process is taking dialogue to another level for very concrete reasons. And we got such great results, right, in 6 weeks. And now we're going to take you to a next level. I think that's exciting. You, as the holder of the expectation, have the responsibility to provide the help and support that has been agreed. And it recognizes that learners are different. Some are very needy in some occasions and others are very independent. And sometimes both parties lack the judgment that they shouldn't be talking to you or they should, whatever. But this is a dialogue that's really important to have. Okay, so that's smarter and alignment. And you asked me to cover those 2. Now I'll take questions of clarification or anything about those 2 models. Does that help you in terms of why you think they're important? Some are more clearer on this or more comfortable with it in all respects. Good. Silence I will take as set.
You know, it's interesting. I just finished. We have a group that we lecture on from 8 to 3 on Thursday, and by 1 to 3 in the afternoon, it's like there's no 2-way communication. I'll ask them something and I get no answers.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh. And you know, and I was just looking at that and I was thinking this is a really bizarre idea, but what if? Well, it is kind of a weird idea. Because I give them like a lecture outline ahead of time. And I was just thinking, what if at the start of class I handed them that lecture outline and I said, break into little groups and tell me what you know. Because you know what will be delivered. And I need to know what you need help and support on, what you know and what you don't know. Maybe try and get them to engage a little more that way.
Mm-hmm.
By kind of turning the table a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, we had an interesting. I did a session with student services before I came here, and one of the people was saying, you know, we do so much hand holding, and that's partly because of what walks through the door is dependent and needy and all that sort of thing. But by the same token, to what extent do we foster that? And that's what I hear in your starting to noodle about this very long day and that sort of thing. And that's what this is designed to do. You start noodling and think, oh, okay. you're not running much risk if you do it and try it and it doesn't
Oh,
work,
yeah.
so you might as well have a go. Back
You'll
to
start
what
speaking up.
Ken was saying earlier on, right? Any other points on alignment before I move on? To actually do this, the first time is going to feel a bit awkward. By the time you've done it 3 times, you'll be thinking, why didn't I do this before? So you actually think you're going to do it that way? You're going to die! I'm looking at John, mate. He's looking at me and I'm smiling and I'm thinking about auto. The process of alignment and smarter is there for a very specific purpose. At the end of August, I did the Alignment Iceberg, which is a behavior iceberg that's been used a lot by many people to say, you know what you see in front of you is probably about 10% of the person. You don't really know people. And so understanding what's lying behind the waterline is probably something to do with their self-interest. Sometimes it's a little depressing because I just want to get through the exam and get out of here. But other people have something that we can work with. The other thing is the wider the range of experience of students, the more important it becomes to understand them as different people. And we had this very interesting conversation, you know, the new student walks through the door and you go, head, arm, leg, leg. Human. Australopithecus? No. But the sort of facial hair and the nose rings and everything are a little off-putting. Right? And so you've got to get past that. And behind it, what's there? And quite a few people have just honestly said, you know what? I had a good kick up the pants when we did this exercise. The other thing that we really do get to is values and beliefs, what we as a college have as values and beliefs about the education of people and those sorts of things. And if you talk about that to your students on the first day, so there's a way of engaging what that actually means, right? Now here's the reason for those alignment and smarter tools. If we have quality relationships, or better quality relationships with our students, what is the outcome? We get quality thinking. And I'm not making this up. This is what you told me in your evaluations. I am now getting more participation. They are now asking better questions. They now start to be more responsible because they feel entrusted, they feel that they have a sense of partnership, so they start acting in a quality way, like respecting each other, which is a big deal, right? And what you're saying is, I think, from what you've said, is we'll get quality results out of it. So smarter and alignment are not just models, they're important rubrics for getting below the waterline with some of these people. And we're obviously not talking about the stellar student who comes in, highly motivated, breeze. They tell you everything and you're off to the races, right? It's those people who sit there and you just think there's a dark hole in the middle of their head. You know? We talked about this, didn't we? You know, when you asked about expectations. So quality expectations have a window below the waterline. We get to establishing better relationships. Now, how do we do that? Well, I don't know if anyone's seen a U like this before. Have you seen something like this before? Okay. This is the rubric for influence, persuasion, and it reflects very strongly the psychology of change when people are making important decisions. If you want the antecedents of this is Gregory Bateson, this is neuro-linguistic programming, if you want a reference point. Ken and I have used it for a long time because it's so powerful. And the first thing that we do is, where do I start? When I'm engaging Alex in conversation and I'm trying to find out where he's coming from, where do I start? Well, start on the left-hand side and find out if Alex is just happier than a pig in pudding, adjective. Or, you know, he's just sitting there scratching himself and he's quite happy and he's making us meet with him? Yeah, oh, cool, cool. Or has he got a problem which I can help with? Now, you know students, they have all sorts of problems you can't do anything about, right? But you're looking for specific problems to help them. They have a career aspiration, they have a difficulty understanding math, but they recognize they need math to be a welder, for example. Right? If we can keep with them, we follow their line of disturbance with questions. And so we're saying, okay, tell me more about this problem that you're having. How's that impacting you? Well, I don't think I'll be able to get a job. It's, oh, all right, okay. So, and we're getting down the bottom of the U, which is the fulcrum of change. It's the extent to which the individual feels there are so many problems, oh, all right, we've got to change. If you don't stay in line with that person, you'll be offering solutions to them before they've even seen the value of them. And that's when they glaze over. Then we can talk about questioning to say, okay, so this is a pretty big problem. Right, okay, what have you thought about doing about it? And they might look at you like gone out. I don't know. Great, here's some options. What do you think about those options? Well, I think I'd prefer to do it that way. Okay, and how's that going to help you? Well, I think it'll be, you get the idea, right? Now I'm staying in line with this person as I'm enabling them. And so when I say, okay, what expectations do we need to create and get agreement to help solve this problem? Guess what? I've got a lot of commitment that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And that's the data that we're getting. 16 of you are asking students for expectations. And to what extent are we getting, do we need to get more expectations out and get them smarter and aligned with them? Okay? And that's my advert for getting quality expectations. Now the U that we're going to use has 6 steps. A learning U or an influence U has normally 6 stations. No, it's not that one. Right. So we're going to start out with, what problems have you experienced of not being on the same page with a teacher or boss? Because they're power figures in somebody's life, and if they've had problems, it probably accounts for why they react to us the way they do. So understanding that can help. Then we're going to say, well, how is it a problem for you? Like, it's bloody irritating me. Well, I lost my job because I fell out with him or her or whatever. Right? The other thing is, okay, why do you think that was a problem? Now we're into self-reflection about the fact that they're misaligned. So, do you have a problem? How is it a problem? Why is it a problem? Okay. For those that have a knowledge of psychology, you'll recognize the laddering effect of questions. Has anyone heard the term laddering before? So we're into Cattell's PF, personality testing. How do we get to constructs? Remember, Cattell, as a psychologist, was interested in analyzing constructs of people. They are the very bricks that we can't change. This is what makes us up. So the what, how, why questioning sequence has a very powerful way of getting below the waterline in the iceberg. So now we start understanding a bit more about what we're dealing with. We can then move to, okay, so you've expressed a problem, Tricia, about this. What do you think is worth doing something about it? I'm not prescribing, I'm asking. Okay? And then I'm going to help you. How would you structure an expectation to solve that problem? Well, I don't know. I mean, she's bullying me, or whatever it might be, or I don't know. I just wish that she would take her time to describe some of the things, because I don't understand what she's telling me sometimes. It could be any sort of learning problem like that. And then the 6 is where the commitment comes in. What will you gain if you get agreement, an alignment, to that expectation? That's the learning you we influence you for aligning expectations. When you get to the point when a student just goes, and I know several of you have said this week, I asked them for expectations and they, or the other one is, they give me the expectations that I know. You can unpack that one. They're giving me the expectations they think I want them to have. Right? Yeah. So this sort of questioning model is related directly to an exercise, which is this one. And I want you to spend just 10 minutes giving me the answers to these questions. And they're not answers in the sense of being correct, but talk to your colleagues in your division. When should I state expectations to a student first? When should I elicit what they think I expect? And the third one is, what should I ask them for their, when should I ask them for their expectations first? Go into your groups, you've got 10 minutes, and I want somebody to report back to me. Okay? Understand the task? Because there's a lot of different, I know from the meetings this week, there are a lot of different experiences. And you're going to have to move quickly because we're limited on time. Okay?
Exactly.
Your orientation.
Are you hearing this? Could you speak to the group? They might hear you.
My expectations were to listen the first time.
You can't get good stuff.
We're kind of seasoned professionals. 3, 2, 1. We'd go backwards because the students, when should I ask them for their expectations? We'd do that early on, first day. They're not thinking about their expectations, maybe. We'd ask them anonymously to put it down. 2, when should I elicit what they think I expect? Probably same time. 3 would come as a result of discussion, and then our expectations would, I hate to steal your thunder, but align with some of theirs, or we'd modify it, something like that.
Right. Well, there you go. 3, 2, 1. There's some logic to that, isn't there? What did other people come out with?
Same thing.
Same thing? 3, 2, 1?
First day. Everything first day, and then we decided that we should do a midterm and then a end of course evaluation too.
Okay. Cool. What about this group at the back? I'm saving the best for last.
Nicole, do you want to?
Did you want to? We just had a lively discussion about the value of whether or not we should even ask them what they think I expect versus I should state them right out. We kind of had a little lively back and forth.
Good.
April and I actually came to blows and stuff.
Yes.
Kind of,
Well, April's so different and difficult to draw out. I mean,
kind of honing in next to what they were saying too is that, again, on the first day,
Right.
the fact that we are the instructor, and also I've found from the years that I have taught, I have had some syllabi that are more vague, and something like public speaking, which is planned out every single day.
Right.
Students know
There's a
what is
structure.
expected of them, and I find overall students find comfort, and they like knowing, okay, I have a speech that's due then, I have a speech
Right,
then,
right.
rather than this vagueness, this
so
this
you're
kind
an
of scare.
advocate early on to
Right,
state
those that are
your
serious,
expectations first.
And then, of course, every now and then, some checking up. Are you learning? Are you getting out of this class what you think you should? What can I do to help you? You know, some checkpoints along the way. So.
And my favorite group.
We looked at it a little differently because we're the nurses. You know,
It's the rubber
we're
gloves that
using
does it.
live patients. We're using live patients. We're giving shots to live patients.
Yeah.
So we looked at this a little differently. When should I state my expectations of the student first? It might be a clinical situation.
Right.
You know,
Something to
we
do
don't
with
have
safety and hygiene
yes,
and things like
yes,
that.
we
There's
don't
no
have time to practice, or you know, we're out in the real
practice on
world
the
here.
patient, you know. No, stick it in the other end, you know.
When should, and then the second one, when should I elicit what they think I expect first?
Yep.
We talked again about a clinical situation because the students in clinical are very, very focused on tasks.
Right.
They want to give a perfect shot, they want to start a perfect IV,
Right.
and it's bigger than that. We need to tell them, yes, you're doing good with your procedures, but you need to use critical thinking and thinking
Right.
about all the different things that are going on with these
And does that
patients.
take you into sort of the rubrics of evidence-based nursing then?
Yes, it does, yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. Hello? It's called bringing in behaviour. Very sophisticated. What do you think, Brian?
Hey, Brian, what do you think? Yeah, Brian, what do you think?
John. At least they got his attention. And they didn't have to pull out the magnum. It was pretty good.
My biggest issue, all right,
Yes.
I'll be honest, is how do you get the expectations from the students? I mean, let's start there.
Well, these ladies have some very nice instruments.
You know what I mean, though? Do you meet with them?
I think we need dog collars.
Do you
So that-
meet
yeah.
with them
Oh, excuse me, those are my
individually?
toys.
Do you have them write something on paper, you know? The way I always thought is, the way I always thought, I go in and these are my expectations. And if you have any questions about my expectations or I need to clarify anything, I'll do it.
Right.
And then I do have individual students come to me often, but how do I get everyone's expectations, especially those who need it,
Making a
aren't
good point.
going to give them to me?
The thing is, for the self-assertive, focused student, his approach is going to work.
Yeah, that's fine with them. I don't have an issue.
Well, I won't go into
Not
the
nursing, I mean,
tawdry
still
detail
student.
of, no, but anyway.
But when you're looking at a group though, you need to do a group consensus.
Yeah, because why, John?
Well, because if you don't, then you're already individualizing the law. You can't do that because then there's not going to be any unity.
Right, but my question is, how do you do that?
Like for attendance, we make them sign a contract, put it in their file.
Yeah. When you go over the syllabi, you have this discussion of expectations.
Right.
I found in my classes the best way to get any kind of response from students is to first let them talk to each other. Put them in groups of like 3 to 4. You give them anywhere from a minute to 5 minutes, depending on how much time you want to spend, and they take notes, and then you have have them. I just go around and have some tell me one expectation or whatever the topic is from each group. So one group doesn't take them all, and everybody gets to talk, and then you kind of go around and are there any more? And on any topic, I get a much better feedback on anything. If you let them talk, even if it's only for a minute, you let them talk. At least they start talking, and then you get feedback. So and that's how I did it. This thing.
I think Johnny, you're talking about concrete expectations. Like if I were to put them down, you kind of want them to have them written too, right? Well, I was thinking another way. What if there's an evolution of a student during the semester that by the end of November, they've evolved into actually knowing what they expected themselves, kind of like a growth. I had a girl in history one time, she made flashcards all on her own, color-coded and the whole thing. I saw other students looking around and saying, that's a great idea. I didn't provide the flashcards, she did.
All right.
And they might mimic that behavior, especially if they're doing poorly. I was to say, it's hard to drag expectations out of them, but they might have them as the semester progresses.
Yeah. Good point.
Nothing works to like a little bit of peer pressure amongst
Peer
each
pressure,
other.
yeah.
Competition, one sees one handling a patient one day and one way, and they'll call each other on it.
Nick took issue with nursing department too. She said about her students are alive. We've had to check many a pulse in
Just
our
a
room
rumor.
with our students.
That's where the dog collar comes in.
Oh, you know, we do some help there.
When you're hearing these sorts of comments, there's one size doesn't fit all. It's not the same at the start as it's halfway through. In science, we had that conversation in our meeting, Maria, about how do you prepare them for the difficult bit. Serena, you were in that conversation, right? In terms of how do you get them to say, you don't miss any of these because, you remember that conversation?
You did say it's serious. I remember that.
No, how the material builds. If you miss a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden
Thank
you're
you
going
for
to
the
be lost when
translation.
you return because you missed the material that leads up to it.
And there's an important point coming out of here that you can't rely on saying, but I aligned expectations on day one. Because we had a conversation with you guys yesterday, wasn't it, about what you're doing regularly
Yes.
to check on progress. Okay, how far have we got? Are we behind anywhere? How do we catch up?
We do like weekly agendas, like an outline for the week and what we expect them to be able to get done. And then we follow up on Monday. You know, this is what we were able to get done. This is what we see that we did get done. So now we're going to catch up on this. And it's not as easy as it sounds, but
There's evidence from what your evaluations that people are now doing things regularly. You have an example of homework.
Yes.
Yeah. So the question is, what expectation do you have of me? And they said homework. Okay.
How do you get them to do the work outside of the class? That's the issue that I see.
Say again?
How do you get them to do work outside of the classroom? That's the biggest issue I see, to be honest. I have a good group of students that, we come every day, I don't know if they get this mentality from high school, if they were just pushed through or whatever, but I'm here, and if you can't teach me what I need to know in 53 minutes,
Yeah.
then it's your fault. I'm not
You
going to
get
do any
points for
homework.
homework?
I'm not,
Do
huh?
you get points for homework?
Yes, I grade homework. I give it a test grade. It's big in my class.
Okay, so here's an issue. Pretty good students not doing homework. With aligning expectations in mind and hearing some of the ideas around, what ideas would you have to help John do something different?
Right.
Have them teach you something in 53
What?
minutes about, like, if it's seriously a problem with a particular class, I don't know what it really looks like, but have them design a lesson where, they're teaching, whether it's, a group that teaches for the 53 minutes or a group that teaches for 10 or whatever, and say, you have to teach it to the class in this amount of time. You're not allowed to give homework. You have to make it them understand it in this amount of time, whatever that is you think is appropriate. And then, quiz people on it and see if it really works. I mean, if your class is really like, if you have a bad class for homework, that might be something to make them realize, okay, you know what, this is something I might have to practice. And I always, with chemistry and math, I always in the beginning, and I remind them right before the first test, and again later, but, you're not going to be able to shoot 3-pointers from day one, right? Not even probably going to be able to shoot two-pointer from day one.
No, you can't.
So that kind of stuff takes practice, and when you
Yeah, but how do
equate
you-
it with things like that, sometimes it helps. But
How
I
do you
mean,
instill that,
really
though?
putting them on the spot, if they're really that obstinate about homework, put them on the spot for it.
One of the things I did differently this semester with homework than I usually do is, I prepare worksheets and I do half the homework on the board. I only grade the other half. But for some reason, I have much better homework this semester in the classes that I've been doing that, because they look at it like, I gotta have my homework done. So,
No, it
Cause
is.
so then they just I do the odds and they do the evens. I only grade the evens. They haven't really complained, about it, but it improved my homework this semester.
Nick, even going across discipline, I agree with John, that's the biggest problem that I have in public speaking. The A student who even gets A's in their written tests, if I go on the day of a speech, the day they're supposed to be speaking, a couple hours before that, they're putting their speech together in the library in the computer lab. Whereas I try to impress upon them the amount of preparation it takes to get ready for this day. But over the years, I just can't, even with the good students, they do it at the last minute.
Because of time, I'm going to have to call a halt to the conversation. But, there is a but. I'm interested in getting some volunteers. Okay? Remember where I started? Because this sort of conversation is really, really valuable. When somebody from completely different discipline says, oh, have you tried it that way? And they go, okay, I'll give it a go. Remember, the definition of madness is
If you keep doing the things the same thing over and over again and expect something different, you're insane.
Right. Pretty good. Pretty good. Doing the same thing repeatedly. Okay.
I understand.
So let's get on to phase 2. We didn't get a chance to do this, but it's something I would like to do with volunteers at some point in the next 2 weeks, is to actually practice some of these skills I outlined. Here's the plan for phase 2, okay? And I will be sending copies out by Ken to when we've got this. We're still tightening it up,
So we don't
but
have to
essentially I want to get some volunteers. I would like a volunteer, for at least one volunteer from each division, okay? Because you've got different problems and things like that. There would be some web meetings with volunteers, briefing and setup. And this document, I'd like everyone to take a copy and read it, because there's some stuff in here that's going to help with the conversation we've just been having. But for volunteers, if you want to be a volunteer, you really need to read this carefully. Okay? Now, what's going to happen? We are going to be asking volunteers to tape record, as I'm doing my own session at the moment, to record digitally, by a tape, whatever, and download it onto YouTube. I am then going to coach, do an analysis and give you coaching. The coaching, because no one's ever done this before, by the way, there's 2 things that a volunteer will do. One, they'll receive coaching. You say, you know what, I think we've got too many things in this model. I'd like to change the wording of how we talk about this particular skill. And then the responsibility would be to the volunteer to report back to their divisional meetings what they're getting out of it. Okay? Clear on the process? So, first sessions, we want done by these dates. I'm not going to go into detail now. We'll get some divisional meetings, and we're getting to the point where we're having divisional meetings early enough to impact exam performance. The timing of it, of course, is very tight, because I understand that the exams start on December the 14th. Is that correct? And the timing on this plan needs to be adjusted. I misunderstood something, so, okay. What will happen is we will be asking, Maria's a good example because she starts the week with a session on expectations and ends the week. So if you imagine that section, Maria, I'd ask you to record it. And what I'd be looking for is the extent to which you use process behaviors. Okay? Bring in, shut out, outlining what we're going to be doing, transitioning, you know, the traffic cop, we've done this piece, now we're going to move over here. And the seeking information, the questioning, and I'll go into detail why we don't use the word questions in this model. It's because people seek information and they don't ask questions, basically. But I want to see the extent to which people are using different sorts of questions to elicit and deepen the alignment with their students. And I'm also interested in how you react to the students. Are you disclosing? Disclosing is a very powerful behavior when you say to somebody, I had this problem when I was at college, sort of thing. You know, that's disclosing behavior. Reinforcing, that's a good point, like that, that was good. And there are many other ways of doing it in your own style. And constructive criticism, the extent to which you are giving reasoned explanation of why an expectation is unrealistic, for example. I'm interested in that. Giving information, it's what we do most of the time. This is what I'm doing a lot of at the moment, right? Giving facts, opinions, giving examples of good expectations. What does a good expectation sound like? If you're running an alignment session, you need to say, look, this is a poor one, this is a good one. Why is this a better expectation than that one? You might just unlock a few wheels and they start giving you better expectations, in the sense that they're more thoughtful, specific, measurable, achievable, etc. And gives expectations. Obviously, as we've said, there are times when you have to be clear, clinical situation being one of them, start of the program another. You've got to give expectations. Are you giving clear expectations? And what we're interested in is the extent to which students make statements of problems, and there's a definition of what we mean by that, but problems that an alignment could help with, not all problems, right? And needs, they're expressing something to do with misalignment with their colleagues, with you, with the program, whatever it might be, and are they expressing those needs? Because when they do that, when we start building expectations on those needs, there's a far more likelihood we get more commitment. And lastly, do the students state more expectations? Now, if you're interested in volunteering, then there's a lot more that I can describe to you how the observation works, the statistics that we use to look at changes, how we measure outcomes and everything else like that. The benefit of taking part is you are probably the first. This model is, I created this model overnight, right? And there's many common elements from other models, don't get me wrong, I didn't originate it, but it's created on the basis of listening to the difficulties and what you want to do. At the end of 8 weeks, I will guarantee if you commit to it, you will be a far better instructor. And you're going to say, prove it, and I'm going to say, you've got an hour, because I can prove it. So for those people that are up for a challenge, right, and think, well, I could work with this mad Englishman, and this sounds really quite interesting in a sort of perverse, masochistic sort of way, then I want to know about it, you know? Because I think we're on the cusp of something that can really make a difference. And why do I say that? Because you told me it. You said it's making a difference. Like we were talking about yesterday, right? It's making a difference. Small things, but it's making a difference. What can we do that's any better? If we don't experiment and try things, we won't know, we just don't know how much potential is there, right? So, by all means, take one of these. It's valuable for reading as you go through sessions. I'll take some, back. And then, you know, if you want to talk to me afterwards or give me an email, by all means, do so. As I say, I'm looking for one instructor, one volunteer instructor from each division as a minimum. And there's more here in case we run out. Thank you. I was 5 minutes over.
You don't want to do it.
Thank you.
Good. Fun.
What I'm saying.
I can treat it like that.
More space than
And therefore you understand why master performance is. Thank you.
John and Gary.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We decided out of our group, the one who left first is going to be the one who's going to do it.
Good idea. I do like volunteers.
Okay, welcome.
I'm going to be honest with you, Nick, I really want to do it, but I got like these guys who are here. And that's one of the things I'm looking at. It's like, if it was in February, and they have 5 weeks open,
Yeah, because I have.
that'd be a great time to do
Well,
that.
John, that's letting you know.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing. And if you say, this is your contact.
Well, here's one of the things.
You've got my email. Here's an email. They say, look, I'd love to take part
for
this
that.
point.
Yeah.
Or under these ones.
Yeah,
Here's
that
one
would
of
be
the things
great.
that
I would be very helpful because I usually know
That is a good time to do it.
Yeah, she had,
But
visited with me yesterday. She had
what are we
one-
looking at for potential extra work above and beyond?
We started talking about.
Well, the first thing is you got to read the recording.
Clear your mind.
Yeah, well, you know, I've got 3 very loud children at home, so.
Are you leaving tomorrow to take?
Leaving at 4:45.
Because I know how valuable it is. It's not just for the expectations.
When you're back? When you're coming back?
That'd be
So,
great.
you know,
Saturday?
Lori's
I'm
still
doing alignment.
She's dropping into the airport tomorrow. Gotta come back here. That's a lot of students.
That would be great.
Never ends.
Do you want me to send you one first?
No. I just wanted this morning, this one that I sent her. It's huge.
Getting
That's
annoyed
got
with
just about anything.
the state today and this
It's full of
funding shit. They keep messing up their, you know, it's like,
Alright.
it's like, I don't, our system, nothing else, we're being taught, we don't have one of these new houses that for some reason, we're not linked in.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't get more
You
than some
gotta be able to take this.
like the budget.
Yeah, but they're-
They volunteer for
Like
this.
87 cents, 47 cents, and so it's like, oh, you
I
have.
can even stop by your office.
You know, she sends me an email.
Yeah, you're over there.
With you, and I'm like, well, whatever. So you don't get your.
I know that 70% of the
So
time.
just annoying. Or I was like, just like on that edge of just wanting to like yell at the person.
And there's only several reasons why that.
What, April?
When you ask, when you get the other side of the year,
Why do you about to leave right now?
because now you know more questions should be. Then those questions will work.
no.
Produce a-
Well, I just recorded on that
Students say,
video.
you know what?
Don't worry, I'll have Barry stop it when.
Now we've got.
That would be funny. And nobody would ever watch that. You never know. I'll give it a award.
I'm sure there's a lot of fun.
Still, I know. I mean,
It's fine, it's fine.
Thanks, thanks.
No dog collars.
Like I did last time, just throw them on the.
Prude. We're gonna go with those.
Call me or something. Call me. I'm ready for some nice cold,
I
soup,
would
nice
be
hot pizza.
so embarrassed for that.
That's kind of funny. Yeah.
So embarrassed for that.
Thanks, ladies. Have a good night.
Well,